The fourth thing that Peter had is a sin pattern. Peter found himself in this circumstance. The conditions were ideal and he denied. Luke chapter 22 verse 57 reads, "But he denied it, saying, 'Woman, I do not know him.' And a little later someone else saw him and said, 'You also are one of them.' But Peter said, 'Man, I am not.' And after an interval of about an hour, still another insisted, saying, 'Certainly this man was with him, for he too is a Galilean.' But Peter said, 'Man, I do not know what you're talking about.'" So he denied first, and that satisfied them. They were happy. Peter was safe. Peter was satisfied. They asked again. Peter denied again. They were happy. Peter was safe. Peter was satisfied. And then the Bible says there was a space of 1 hour. What happened in the space of 1 hour? Between Peter's second and third denials, there was a space of 1 hour. What happened? What happened was they assembled the Sanhedrin in the middle of the night. They came up that pathway, went to the palace of Caiaphas to have a hurriedly assembled impromptu session to accuse Jesus. They had accusations, they had false accusations that were refuted, and then finally they asked, are you the Son of God? And he answered in the affirmative, and that was enough for them. They accused him of blasphemy and sentenced him to death. And then they beat him, they pulled out his beard, and they slapped him around. All this happened in that 1 hour. After that, after the conviction was complete, the Sanhedrin left the palace of the high priest and went away, because according to Jewish law, you cannot convict somebody in the middle of the night. It needs to be done during the daytime. So they would come back during the daytime to confirm that conviction. But in the space between the second denial and the third denial, they had done the conviction and the beating already. So the people on the courtyard were listening to what was happening in the palace of Caiaphas. Once that settled down, attention focused back onto the courtyard. And now somebody noticed Peter again. And they asked him for the third time, "Are you one with Jesus?" And now it is easier for him to say no. The first sin is the hardest to do, isn't it? The second time it's easier. The 50th time, a piece of cake. He got into a pattern of sin. We can easily get into a pattern of sin. I want to give two reasons why there can be a sin pattern. The first one is the pleasure of sin. The pleasure of sin. Hebrews chapter 11 verse 24 and 25 reads, "By faith Moses, when he was grown up, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to be mistreated with the people of God rather than to enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin." Sin is pleasurable. Sin has benefits. So even though there are subsequent emotional and physical consequences, it's because of the pleasure of sin that we keep coming back to it. Peter had a benefit when he denied. He was safe. He was not beaten up like his master. The second reason for a sin pattern is because of the lack of immediate, permanent consequences. The lack of immediate, permanent consequences. It's because of the grace of God that He doesn't punish us right away. And we still take advantage of the grace of God. In Romans chapter 6 verses 1 and 2, Paul says, "What shall we say then? Are we to continue in sin that grace may abound? By no means. How can we who died to sin still live in it?" What if God gave us immediate, permanent consequences? If our problem is lust, and Jesus said, if you look with lust, you've committed adultery. What if the first time you looked with lust, you got blind in one eye? Would you look again? No. What if your problem is anger, and the first time you got angry, you lost an inch of height? How many more times are you going to get angry? What if your issue is worry and anxiety, and you build these fantastical, hypothetical scenarios that could never happen, but it can happen in your head? And the next time that happens, God says, all right, we will let it happen. If that happened one time, you'll never do it again, right? Or what if we are lazy and we don't want to take part in what God is doing, and we give random silly excuses because we are lazy, and the next time we do it, we lose 10% of our bank balance immediately? How many more times would we give silly excuses? It's because of the lack of permanent, immediate consequences. The combination of the pleasure of sin and the lack of permanent, immediate consequences can lead us to have a sin pattern.